Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I'm Alex Ricky Gonzalez. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to the first live engagement broadcast discussing restorative justice. The six-episode series will be a discussion with members of the Longmont Community Justice Partnership, or LCJP, which has successfully implemented restorative justice practices in the city of Longmont, Colorado. Over 20 years, they have transformed their community through hard work and cooperation. This is an engagement broadcast, which means we want all of you to join the conversation. Leave your comments and questions before, during, and after each live episode to keep that conversation going. Make sure to use hashtag #RestoreJustice so we can find your comments. Each episode will consist of 30 minutes of guided questions from me, followed by 30 minutes of audience engagement. So please ask your questions and share your thoughts as they come to you. Kristen Drysdale of Lend One Hand is here to make sure they get shared. In today's discussion, we'll meet Candee Campbell, find out what the LCJP is, and the current state of restorative justice in Longmont, Colorado. Longmont is the home to more than 90,000 people, sits about a half hour northeast of Boulder and almost an hour north of Denver. While incarcerations and recidivism rates across the U.S. are at an all-time high, with over 1.5 million inmates and an average recidivism rate of 65%, the story in Longmont, Colorado is drastically different. In 2010, 165 offenders participated in the Restorative Justice Program. Less than 10% reoffended after 1 year, and 97% of all participants in the program at that time, victims and offenders included, were satisfied with the program's process. To house those 165 offenders in prison for 1 year would cost almost $4.5 million, which is over 10 times the 2010 budget of LCJP. These recidivism and satisfaction rates have remained consistent in Longmont since 2001. My guest for this episode is Candee Campbell, Executive Director of Longmont Community Justice and Boulder County Restorative Justice. Candee has an impressive background in finance, media, and nonprofit work. She's been a publisher and editor of Design Publications and Virgo Publishing, CEO of Colorado Company Magazine, and the marketing manager at Penton Media. Today, she's the Executive Director of LCJP, commands the implementation of restorative justice in Boulder County, and is a board member of the Women's Business Development Center, which she also founded. Candee, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us about LCJP.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
We really do appreciate your time. I know you're a very, very busy woman. So I just gave this really broad overview. What I'd like to start with is a lot of people have been asking, what is restorative justice? So let's start there. What is it?
That's a big question, and I think it's been on top of mind and topic for the country for the last several years as we pave the way for a new way to respond to crime and conflict in communities. Longmont's very fortunate to have had trailblazers. 20 years ago, Beverly Title and Mike Butler had a vision for our community that was phenomenal. It was a response to that same crime and conflict that brought victims and offenders together with an opportunity to have dialogue. Restorative justice views violence, community decline, and fear-based responses as indicators of broken relationships. It offers a different response, namely the use of restorative solutions to repair harm and conflict, crime, victimization. So a big question to answer, but it's a very human approach to how we respond to offenders.
So is that what makes it so important to a community, the schools, and society in general? Is it that it's that human response?
Absolutely. For our program to be successful, it enlists all community members to participate. In our program, we have a schools program where we enlist the school district, and namely individual schools from middle schools to high schools. The school resource officers, which brings in our police department, our community program within the police department. We also, our volunteer base is significantly valuable to us because it brings in the community members to speak to harms that the community is impacted by.
So you mentioned your program. let's transition here to talking about LCJP specifically, because from what I understand, restorative justice is it's a really broad concept, and different places kind of take their own way of practicing it, of making it happen. So how exactly does LCJP work? Because we have a lot of people saying, well, yeah, it's a good idea, but I don't understand how you got it to work.
Sure. You know, I don't think there's a secret formula that goes hand in hand with making a program successful. I will say for us, it's the stakeholders, our key stakeholders, the buy-in from the community and our community programs are what make it successful. It's taken 20 years. I think we're entering into our 21st year, and that's like planting seeds 21 years ago for a really great idea, but having to get that traction comes from direction and leadership. In this case, leadership came from the police department, and Chief Mike Butler was that implementer. For us, as we continue to get into the school districts and offer solutions, that requires buy-in from the key stakeholders within that district. So it is that personal, it's a personal approach, but it's also commitment to all of our partners that keep our program surviving. For us, we're a nonprofit, so we have the luxury of being independent of any government program. So we're not defined specifically by one targeted grant or one pilot program. We have the luxury of being able to tap into other foundations and other supporters, and that also generates more buy-in and more interest in what we do.
But you do work with the government, correct?
We received several justice assistance grants through the Edward Byrne Family Foundation, and because of that, we were able to pilot our schools program, and we were able to pilot our program within the DA's office. So it is very instrumental for us to utilize resources, and in this case, the justice assistance grants, because of legislation, are trailblazing the way for other programs within the country to tap into resources and launch and develop their own restorative practices programs.
And how has that been going for Colorado? What exactly, let's back up a little bit, because you spoke about legislation, because we also got a couple of comments about this legislation too. What exactly does that legislation mean for Colorado?
Sure. Several years ago, our House Bill 111032, that was authored by Senator Pete Lee, was passed. For Colorado, that was instrumental because it defined restorative practices and restorative justice as a first response, or a preferred first response in courts and in schools. As we continue to develop what that means, it's a little scary for a lot of communities because no one wants to be told what to do, and certainly not have restorative justice be defined as something that is required. To step back, restorative justice and restorative practices are optional. It is victim and offender have to come together and agree to the process, or it doesn't work. So for Senate bills and House bills to be passed for any state, including Colorado, a lot of questions come up. And to us, that's fantastic, because that means there's dialogue and conversation about what opportunities and responses we have available to us. We had House Bill 13-1254 was passed, and that gave funding and resources for 4 pilot sites within Colorado to launch a restorative justice program. Boulder County, Alamosa, Weld County were included in those 4 pilots. Because we're Boulder County with our program, we were included in the Boulder County pilot service area. Again, that's very exciting. There's funding at the state level and government level for more exploratory research and finding out if this really does work, if there is data and statistics to support that restorative practices are a great response and an answer to what's been ailing our court systems.
And what is most interesting to me about what you're saying right now is, you keep talking about it as a learning opportunity. You keep talking about it as continuous growth. I think a lot of people may have come into this saying, okay, so they're done. They got it to work. Great. It's done. But it sounds like you are continually trying to find better and better ways to make this program a better program, a better option.
We've had some hard lessons this last year. Being a legacy organization doesn't mean we have all of the answers. We found out, I guess, the best possible way to find out when you experiment and you take risks. We wrote several grants in conjunction with our 20th Judicial District and raised almost $1.4 million over 4 years to bring restorative justice to Boulder County. In that process, within 8 months, the program and project was ceased. What we learned was we were trying to replicate our Longmont program and plant it right into a district attorney's office in Boulder County. And unfortunately, that doesn't work. You can't replicate a program that is so grassroots and so community driven like ours is and replicate it through paperwork or through funding. We learned, and we are very fortunate to, again, with the legacy organization, recognize and value our partnerships, which are at the human level. So from our schools to our volunteers, to our community partners, to our staff, that you can't replicate that. You have to grow that. So planting seeds in our county was really, bringing back those partnerships and redefining what it means to cultivate a restorative community, not build a restorative justice program.
Which, I mean, it's a total, for someone like me who has grown up in our justice system, it sounds like a shock to me, because it means that I have to change the way that I thought about the justice system. I was given the justice system that I have, and to look at something like restorative justice, it might be a little bit daunting to think I have to grow this. But what are the benefits of growing the program?
I think I would consider, if you go to school and you are elevated to your senior year in high school and you are 12 years old, the shock of everything you're supposed to know and everything you're supposed to implement, you don't have the perceived value. And by transplanting any of our program into another environment is shocking. Transporting restorative practices into a justice system is shocking, and it's two different culture blends. We operate by the 5 R's. Our Beverly Title, our founder, she has coined our 5 R's, and it is known nationally and internationally, and we live by that. And the primary of the 5 R's is relationship. So building any foundation for any organization, whether it's replicating our program into another community or a district attorney's office, begins with our foundational principles. The first one being relationship. You're building relationships and partnerships. The second is respect. So for us to work with our community, it's respecting our community and the values, and understanding demographics and understanding people, because we're stepping into a community not to dictate or